welcome to Crownsmen Energy. I'm your host, Jared Downey. Today on the show, we have Myno Carbon Corporation. We've got their CEO and co-founder here, Thor Kallestad. Thor's been on the show before, way back when we first were getting going. So it's great to have him back on the show. We're talking about carbon sequestration, which is a new topic for me. We've kind of covered it. On the energy side, we've covered it, but this is more, we're approaching it from an ag side. Going to be very interesting. Lots to cover in this episode. So stay with us. But before we do that, we have to hand it over to our sponsors. Gaudy Melina, off to you.
Okay, so today we actually only have one sponsor, but a great one, SolarSet. Introducing the SolarSet Fold, the new foldable frame solar system brings power to your residential and commercial property and can be shipped worldwide. Like all SolarSet products, the SolarSet Fold comes turnkey, pre-assembled, and is easily transported and installed. You can learn more about the SolarSet Fold and their full line of amazing solar systems at solarset.com.
Okay. Thor, welcome to the show. Great to have you back. We had a lot of fun the last time you were on the show. It was in person. Now this is remote. But I think we are going to have a good interview because there's plenty to cover. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here again, Jared. I appreciate it. Nice to talk with you and Gaudy again.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was fun when you actually were in the studio, but times change. You have to change things. I'd say your company sort of represents that. So let's start off. Let's tell us a little bit of, I think the mission is sort of a very clear statement that Myno makes. So can we kick off with that?
Sure. Yeah. Myno Carbon Corporation. We're a startup. We've been in existence for a year. Our mission statement, we're doing a new thing, carbon removal. It's new for a lot of people. And as we face new business decisions and have to decide what to do about certain problems, we always come back to our mission statement. And we spend a lot of time coming up with it. We all like it a lot. We think it's a good guide, but that statement is that we're here. We want to sequester as much carbon as we can, as fast as we can, and do that at capital efficient scale. So we've got kind of in hindsight, looking at it, we've got the proverbial three legs of the stool. We want to be good, we want to be fast, and we want to be cheap. And it's hard to get those three things. They're often in tension. So to accomplish all of them will be quite a good feat. But it's really what we're after here.
You've had a lot of experience with getting companies going, and is that as important to you? Was that as important to you 25 years ago, that those core mission and sort of having that core idea, or as your careers move forward, have you really learned to sort of get everybody working around those types of mission statements?
Yeah, it's definitely been a later in the career epiphany for me, if you will, is that we find that it's just a really great thing that we can all agree on and focus on. And it really helps people be more efficient. You don't have to, makes managing a whole lot easier. Everybody is on board with it, heart and soul. And it helps them kind of figure out through the day, especially working remote, about what everybody should be working on a certain thing. It's a really good guide for us. So got to credit the co-founder of our company, Tom Caston. He was the one who really kind of, drove into me the importance of mission-based thinking. And we came up with this after a good bit of debate internally of who we wanted to be as a company and what our goals were.
Well, you've got three sort of pillars there. Was there one that created the most sort of like, should we have that there? Was there ever a time where it's like, well, maybe we should have these two, or those three, were those kind of always floating?
No, it really started real early days in the company. We had an opportunity to do a job that, could have made pretty good money on it. And, but it wasn't really focused on, it got us off of Tom's big thing. The push was really, climate. He's been doing this for, 40 years. He was doing it before it was really du jour. And, we comment that now the wind is really at our back and we get to benefit from all of this experience that he has, where previously he was, trying to swim upstream doing this. But he's the one that really, don't chase the bright, shiny thing, basically. You focus on what is the mission, go big on climate. And it really resonated with all of us and got us to focus on that core mission of as we'll get into over the course of the interview, I'm sure the numbers will come up on it, but there's an awful lot of carbon that needs to be drawn down out of the atmosphere. And we believe focusing on, if we deliver the mission, then everything else takes care of itself, economics, climate, all of that. And hopefully, we inspire a lot of other companies to go after these same sort of things that we're pursuing. We look at it as a very collaborative space due to the urgency of the problem, rather than, some sort of, secret competition between companies here. So we definitely, a big opportunity that we look to collaborate with like-minded groups on.
Well, I guess we should probably jump into that because when I started, we started talking about you coming on the show here for this. I was actually initially thinking of it as a Crownsmen Energy show, and then as we discussed, sort of the timing just lined up because we had just launched this the Crownsmen Agriculture series. Um, and so it took my brain, when you sort of focused in on an area, it sort of, you gotta unwire yourself. So we're going to talk about what you're actually trying to accomplish, but also who you going after as partners and collaborators in the system.
Yeah, great. So a couple of points on that, kind of we can dive into auger into any of these as as the interview goes clearly. But when it started, we were about a year old, and again, Tom was kind of it started with networking with Tom. He got us on the trail of biochar and carbon removal projects. I was not really paying much attention to this. I know about the climate concerns out there, but biochar and the scalable economic ways to draw down carbon from the atmosphere just hadn't paid a lot of attention to it. He brought it to my attention, captivated my imagination, and then I started to recruit other really good friends, capable people into the company. A lot of us are all oil and gas backgrounds.
I noticed that on your website.
Yeah. So everybody's had pretty successful careers in oil and gas, but we, us all as a team mentally have gone through, quite the transition that economic activity in future, it needs to draw down carbon from the atmosphere rather than emit it into the atmosphere, which is basically what's happened since the Industrial Revolution. You need to have good jobs, scalable growth, but that sort of economic activity has to have a carbon negative character to it, that whatever people are doing for those jobs, those have got to result in bringing down emissions. It's a huge transition and inflection point for society and the global economy. And we just kind of sized up the scale of this opportunity and the need for it. It really, it's got all of us motivated. And I tell you, it's been the easiest thing to recruit people into this when you just kind of start going through some of the numbers and the mission statement and, not to be hokey about it, but it does matter. You think about kids and next generations and grandkids, and this has to be addressed, or it's going to be a rather different world, to say the least, for them that they inherit than what we did.
And I think that the way that you're approaching it is you're not saying there's definitely been a struggle in this space where it's okay, pay more and you can get the results. It's like, you can drive an electric car, but to go any sort of kilometers, you need to spend, half $150,000, that kind of thing. But you're trying to do it in a way that allows it to be, it's actually a true advantage for the company that you're working with.
It is. Yeah, there's a price on carbon. Markets are kind of immature on this, but, rapidly maturing and getting transparency in there and accountability on how you do the carbon math on this. And this is a great thing. This is a real, catalyst for us. We all deeply believe that, nobody's going to do this. I wish I was wrong about this, but nobody's going to do it out of altruism. There's got to be a profit motive involved for people to make these decisions and conduct these projects. And conveniently enough for all of us, we think that time has come where it is, quite profitable to be able to do this. Products you can make from carbon are valuable. There's a price on sequestering carbon. All of these things have come together to really, create what we think is going to be that inflection point where we can get to net zero emissions soon and then turn carbon negative and begin to kind of to draw carbon back down and get near pre-industrial revolution levels of CO2 in the atmosphere.
I just want to break it down to just sort of the core thing because I saw it reading through it on your website, is biochar. Now, it's one of those things I can talk, and you might even think I know what it is for a little bit, but then I very limited. Let's just say that. So, can you just sort of walk us through that? I guess it would be your end product that you're going to end up with is the biochar. Do I have that right?
You do. Yeah, that's the main attraction in the whole thing. And I did not know anything about biochar until starting the process of networking with Tom and kind of working through the business model on this. And at first, I admit this is kind of a low tech. We're going to make charcoal. This is the startup idea. But as I learned more about it, it's a phenomenally powerful economic alternative to drawing down carbon out of the atmosphere. And essentially what it is very simple. It's been around for thousands of years. There's viewers might know down in the Amazon, thousands of years ago, these terra preta soils in the Amazon that were basically biochar. was put into the soil, and the very productive, fertile soils in an otherwise kind of barren soil landscape in the Amazon. But what it is how you make it is you want to get a woody biomass is really the best source of it, and then you run it through a process called pyrolysis, and it's pretty low tech. It's basically high heat, lack of oxygen, and that lack of oxygen is what really limits the CO2 emissions. Rather than if you burn it in an open flame, just a fire, that all goes up as carbon dioxide. Essentially, all of that carbon in the biomass makes its way to the atmosphere, whether you burn it or whether a log on the ground just naturally decays. It all winds up back in the atmosphere. But the unique thing about biochar is if you run it through this pyrolysis process, essentially half of the carbon in that feedstock is converted into biochar. And what it is it's a very stable form of carbon that sequesters that carbon literally for millennia. So it's got that benefit of essentially half of the feedstock that would wind up back in the atmosphere through just natural breakdown, organic decay processes. That becomes essentially permanently sequestered for millennia as far as the fight against climate change is concerned. You lock up half of it, and then the great thing about it is you really get a double whammy with it, is that you can apply this to soils to increase carbon storage in the soil organic content. What biochar really does is it's a home for the microbiome. Is biochar by itself doesn't really do anything additionally for drawing down carbon into the soils. But when you do get it into the soils, it allows the fungi and the microbiome to thrive, which that's kind of the second big part of the story, is rather than directly sequestering just half of that carbon, you get this additional benefit of really increasing soil drawdown through plants and into roughly a third of the emissions that we put into the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution have come from agriculture. The other big culprit on the whole thing is fossil fuels also. But it's a very potent, mature technology that at low cost you can scale and sequester a lot of carbon fast, which is why we decided to home in on biochar as our main attraction.
Is there a I saw on your website, I think it was under, by the way, you have a very nice website for someone who is layman that can actually walk through and figure out what's going on. So please, for the audience, go there. But we'll have plenty of links for that. But so what is the use of the bio, like you said about the use, but there's sort of, I saw one, it said, it's like clean biochar and dirty biochar. And I wanted to distinguish between the two of them.
Sure. Yeah. So we're primarily right now at this stage in our company, we're focused on making clean biochar from woody waste feedstocks. Our first big project is out here on the Olympic Peninsula, and we would like to be in these, these forest product parts of the world. We joke, follow the carbon. Took us a while to kind of boil it down to be that simple, but this is where the carbon is. And for clean biochar, we can rely on forest slash hog fuel, which is basically the bark and the chippings and other things from logs from the lumber trade. Sawdust. These sort of things are make a real clean biochar that then can be used with in agriculture. You can put it right back into the soil, and there's not a lot of debate about that you're going to contaminate anything with the soil because it's from a clean source.
Right.
The dirty biochar, we're not yet focusing on that, but we definitely have our antennas up and watching these opportunities. That would be from municipal solid waste, stuff like that, of burning, it's a lower conversion ratio. You rightfully so would wind up with questions about, what winds up in that biochar, heavy metals, other things. And then farmers would justifiably be concerned about putting that on their crops. Not a sale that we're going to make anytime soon. But the unique thing about the dirty biochar is that it can be used pretty effectively in materials, concrete and asphalt and that sort of stuff, where you can really then sequester and not have these issues with contaminants that you would putting on the soil. So it really comes down to the clean versus dirty distinction being all about the feedstocks that you're starting with in the process.
So in this, so on the clean side, and again, I want to talk, so kind of circle back to your partners a bit, because who, like you obviously forest products is going to be a key. Can you sort of give the setup, sort of paint a picture of what that would look like and who you're partnering or who you want to partner with?
Yeah. Broadly, what our business model, own, finance, and operate biochar production facilities. You get big logistical benefits if you are located in these, follow the carbon, into these big wood baskets where the forest product industry is quite robust. Those facilities then basically would take the forest products, the waste residuals, as they're referred to, hog fuel, slash, the sawdust, these sort of things. We make biochar out of that, sell the biochar, and then you result also with carbon credits in the process that can be sold to third parties, mainly these net zero companies that have made big pledges to reduce their own emissions. What we look at is, we would situate these facilities that we would own and operate right inside of these large wood baskets to be logistically close to the biomass feedstocks. Our products are carbon credits, biochar, which then we would sell to agricultural purposes. Four main markets that we look at for biochar. I'll get to our 3 revenue streams, but for biochar, which is one of the revenue streams for us, 4 big markets. There's water filtration, there's agribusiness, livestock, agriculture, farming, lump all of that together as agribusiness. There's forestry. And then there's also materials. I spoke earlier about materials as a good home for dirty biochar, but just as good for clean also. So 4 big markets for biochar. These are all, many billion-dollar markets. So we're pretty excited about the size of these things. And then to our 3 revenue streams, the other 2 are the carbon credits, and then the process of making biochar. I said earlier that you basically sequester half of the carbon in a feedstock. Well, that other half winds up in excess heat, and essentially to increase the number of carbon credits you get, you got to use that heat for something, and that can be used for buildings, for facilities, to be able to then help them not have to burn natural gas for building heat. You can make electricity out of it. So this becomes the 3rd revenue stream for it, of what you do with the excess process heat in it. So, it's a pretty, pretty stout economics on it, which is why we're excited about it, that, they pay well. And then on top of that, you wind up sequestering a whole lot of carbon in the process. So, we're excited about it, and look to really, grow into other regions, but we're focused definitely on the forest products industry right now.
So, okay, I just want to be, there's something I don't understand. I want to go to my notes here because there's a couple things I wanted to ask. So when you go into, I know you're kind of walking through it, but I'm just trying to understand it clearly. So you have a sawmill, you're going to their bio waste, and you're using that, right? You're turning it into biochar. Now, they could use some of that because you're using a heating system to do it. Could that then heat their unit, plus then they sell the credits, or you're selling the credits? I'm just trying to understand the setup to another company that needs to lower their credits.
It could, essentially what we would look to do is, your general, catch-all statement for those is residuals of, the hog fuel, the sawdust, the forest slash, just kind of a bucket term for them all. But to catch all of that is essentially what we would like to do is to take those from these companies, buy them, and then we would make the biochar from that. And then as part of that, trade, if you will, to be able to get the residuals from them, we can then send those clients back either electricity or heat, whatever they would like to receive in exchange for that, general trade. Their waste, essentially, what's beautiful about the model, their waste, those residuals, wind up being pretty attractive to us because that's a great feedstock for biochar. And then our waste, either heat or electricity, however we'd like to pass it on, can be given right back to the provider of those residuals for us. So there's a real nice circular synergy in the 2 business models. We would look at, the carbon credits are a big part of our economics on doing this. So as the maker of the biochar, those would come into Myno, but we're definitely open to working with customers on putting together win-win models on this, because I was mentioned earlier in the interview that the size of the problem is just so huge. And Myno, we're 12 people, growing fast and getting ready to make another big leap forward here. But we have no doubts. There's been 2 trillion metric tons of CO2 equivalents put in the atmosphere since the start of the Industrial Revolution, and we're a capable, confident bunch, but we're going to need a lot more than 12 people to do that. So we definitely look to build partnerships where we can to go fast with this.
These incentives must be, I mean, like you've already touched on it, but like government regulations, there must be a huge part. I mean, and they're not going away. I mean, you can, one in Canada here or in the US, maybe one province or state might be 3 years behind or 10 years behind, but it is coming in one form or another. I mean, that must just be that must be a pillar of your strategy moving forward. And is it to find these areas that have these sort of government incentives already in place, or are you trying to get into areas where it's sort of coming into place?
It's a really interesting point because, you rewind to a year ago when we were starting the company, I didn't know anything about, carbon credits and how this, worked. I broadly knew they were a thing, but that was the extent of it. And I admit to have been pretty skeptical that this was anything that you could really base a business model on, a year ago. But started to really look into it, and no, these are here to stay, and is me personally comfortable with it. Myno is entirely self-funded. Everybody in the company have been the people writing checks to fund this thing. So everybody else is very confident with the business model that these things are here to stay. Also, the kind of the basis of it, just broadly, I'd have to give a lot of credit to the state of California. And all the best things about the state. It's really the innovation engine here in the United States, and CARB. California Air Resources Board. They were really the ones that kind of started the whole. They've got kind of the most mature exchange, if you will, for these carbon credits. So you can sell them on an exchange. You get a third party to certify these things, as it should be. Nobody's going to, believe us about what we're sequestering, and nor should they. You get a third party that comes out and does this work for you. And then you can sell these things on CARB, or you can sell them directly to some of these large companies that have net zero goals that. I'm making up the number, but if a net zero company's got 1,000 tons a year of emissions that they just can't cut any lower, if they want to get those net emissions to zero, they got to buy 1,000 tons of carbon credits from a company like us, and then they can claim that for them. And it's a great way to help fund these carbon negative projects, as it's a meaningful revenue stream for us that we can develop these carbon negative economic projects. And then, essentially it's kind of regarded as a dirty word in the business world, but I think it's got a great place in this, as it's largely a subsidy for this. It allows everybody to really collaborate across a pretty transparent marketplace. Carbon credits have been abused in the past. There's, as with any, young, growing, immature industry, there's one-offs that show a lot of bad behavior, but this is quickly consolidating into something that, and as it must, to really drive these carbon removal projects into the decades ahead, that this will become a lot of startups dealing with blockchain technology around it, a lot of different things happening in the space. But as we learned more about it, we definitely said, okay, that's something we're comfortable, writing checks and making a bet on, that this is here to stay and is only going to get more robust.
What about the third party part? Again, this show sort of is a mixture of, we promoting companies, we have sponsors, people like yourself, sort of promoting what they're doing, but it also is a personal thing where I get a chance to learn stuff. And I said to you before we started the show, I haven't got a chance to actually ask some of these questions. So one of the things that I was wondering about is these third party certifications, just that entire process of actually approving the results, and then so that the carbon credits get purchased, and that whole process. Could you unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah. So just broadly, that for instance, if it's CARB, that's the exchange in California. Is that these third parties that would go and certify a project like us over the course of a year, maybe we sequester X, whatever that is on metric tons of CO2 equivalents in the biochar. And, essentially what, we generate some emissions over the process. We got trucks driving around, this and that does and should work against us. So what they do is basically a life cycle analysis on the economic operations of the particular project over a period of time. And then with that, then we basically get a security. It's a tradable security that is issued to us that says, we've sequestered X in this period of time. And those third parties that do that, for instance, with CARB, they'll get, I don't know the exact details on, but they get certified by CARB that they are qualified to make these life cycle analyses policies on operations like ours. And then then we can sell those on carb to a company that might want to buy those. Conversely, you can do, almost kind of like an over-the-counter sale, and finance, very similar, just kind of a one-way deal with a net zero company where they will get their own third party, working for them to make sure that what they're buying from us is real. I use us generically. There's other companies out doing these projects, but it does come down to, as it properly should, third independent party, verifying what's gone on with this. But that's, broadly, they measure how much carbon you've sequestered, what your emissions are, pretty simple math. There's a lot of variables in it, but it's not an overly complicated thing. Just measurement and accounting is what comes into it.
So what about scalability, or not even scalability, but size? Like, I'm guessing this is not really a fit for someone with a little sawmill in their backyard that, is hauling in a few trees, a week. Like what is this scale where this becomes an efficient venture?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and that really is the thing that excited us all so much about this business opportunity. And might be generating some competitors out here by saying all that, but this is great. I mean, it's a huge opportunity, and it's one of those things we definitely look at it as collaborators, not competitors, because there is so much that needs to happen so fast on it. But the scalability part of it is just the fundamental technology of biochar. Been around thousands of years, pyrolysis, well understood, sequester a lot of carbon in the process. That's pretty stout technology right there. Well understood, easy to deploy. Again, to the scalability part is the kind of history of biochar, recent history, 10, 20 years or something. It's been a lot of kind of backyard operators, per se. It's just been a lot of, many producers at very small scale. So when we kind of looked at this, it was, and Tom Caston, good on him for kind of putting our nose on the scent of this thing, of really kind of make a step change on the scalability of biochar. Our first facility is going to double U.S. production of biochar. So, and that really goes to, follow the carbon, being really where these rich feedstocks where we can get a lot of it. And then, big capital projects, but we welcome that. We've stood a few things up before, all of us in our past lives. And I also, I mentioned it earlier, of the wind really being at our back on this trend. I think anybody just kind of paying attention to the news, there's, carbon tech, this, that, and climate, this, that, all over the place. And we couldn't have really had a better time to enter this market. But that's really one of the key things that we're looking to do, is kind of bring operational expertise to this and scalability to put together, a big, large project and then go start replicating these all over the place. Because if you can put these near the sources and then to the dirty biochar, we're a long ways off from this yet, but we could get to these municipal solid waste generators, and name your large city. And, there can be, better ways of dealing with the waste than landfills and barges, and some of the typical ways that it's dealt with right now.
Well, it's funny. Just a little while ago, my wife and I were taking out garbage, and she said, "Where does it go?" And I said, "It just goes in the ground."
Yeah,
it just goes in the ground. They just dig a bigger hole. She's never been to a garbage site like that, and it's unbelievable. It's like there's no way this is how we do it. But it is how we do it. And we, like in our apartment building, they just cart out one thing after another. It's just absolutely crazy. But in your case, so I mean, just the clean side is just, I mean, that's a huge industry in itself. I mean, you could be, 1,000 of your systems in place wouldn't even scratch the surface, I don't think, would it?
It starts to, we definitely, we envision these things as being very large systems. But it's just a gigantic problem. It's really, it's, quite sobering as we kind of take a step back and look at it. Again, it's 2 trillion, just roughly the numbers is, I kind of like to look at it in really, 3 parts of it. The pre-industrial revolution, 280 parts per million, was the atmospheric CO2 levels. Right now, they're 420. So that's a 50% increase since the start of the Industrial Revolution. That The second part of the number is that 50%, that's 2 trillion metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent that have been put into the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution began. So basically gone from 4 trillion to 6 trillion in the atmosphere in that time. And then, the third really sobering number on it is that every year we add another 50 billion metric tons to that. So, it's a huge, huge problem. So that 50 billion a year, that's net zero. That needs to be arrested and turned to zero. And by the time that becomes zero, have we added another 3 trillion tons rather than 2 trillion tons to the atmosphere? It gets to be really the key question on how bad are the ramifications of this going to be is, how quickly can we arrest that 50 billion tons a year that is going up and added to the total? So, it's a massive, massive problem. But we feel when we looked at, how to get your toe in the water, on a very big problem, it was, it's biochar to start to scale this, to follow the carbon, go where the good feedstocks are, stand up giant projects is really what we're looking to do to get us started. Hopefully we inspire a lot of other people to, get going with it too, and, reach out to collaborate with us. We look at it with our, clients that, it's, you mentioned earlier about your competition. We just don't really see it as a competition thing because it's big enough for everybody to do very well at and get a whole lot done. So we're a pretty open bunch about it, and we'd like to get a lot of people to help us along the way here. We're all sorts of innovative business models with customers out there who have a lot of biomass feedstocks that they want to use in this quest to help us with the mission as much as we can, as fast as we can, efficiently. It's really what we're focused on.
Well, it's interesting you say about competition, though, and I'm saying kind of as a statement, but I mean it as a question, is if you're the only one in the space, you have to prove to every single person that you've got a good system, which is very difficult to do. Like when we started our long form show, I mean, everybody was doing these 2-3 minute clips, maybe 5 minutes. Sometimes they'd be an interview, sometimes there wouldn't. Everybody believed it was quick. I think the thing was people had short attention spans. That's what everybody said. But of course now, so it was hard to get people to even come on the show. They go, I'm going to just sit in for an hour.
I'm going to talk to you for an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm not doing that. And it was very difficult. But then of course, once we kept pumping out shows, a few people started to copy us. I mean, some people even put the white bricks in the background, and which is fine. It was kind of funny and kind of a compliment. But then as more people started to do it, it was so much easier to build our business. Just so much easier because someone already been on 2 or 3 shows, and now they're coming to us. Is it similar to you where you do need more people to get into the space so that you can, those conversations, it's almost like you're competing of who's better at it as opposed to if it's possible?
It's a great analogy because it's also kind of like, we look at it with, people thought, oh, well, we're just going to be burning oil forever and, driving cars and nobody's ever going to change. And well, people will change when they see there's a better way. And when a long form interview is, it allows you to take a deeper dive into interesting subjects than a 2-minute, interview does, then, people will change and they'll start doing this and find it very interesting. We think it's going to be the exact same way on this we don't think people are going to do this out of the goodness of their heart. It's not going to be an altruistic venture, but when you can start making money on economic activities that have a carbon negative character because of the scale of the problem with climate, we welcome the stampede. If we could be the first ones over the fence to kind of show how some of this can be done, it would just be, the greatest honor and achievement for us if we can inspire, 10, 20 others to start doing this sort of thing. Because I think that's the fundamental thing that needs to be proved is that it's profitable to do this. You right. don't have to emit carbon emissions to have scalable economic growth. It's got to be the other way now.
Something I was curious about is when you talk to, let's say, a pulp and paper mill, are they up to date on it? I mean, some of these are massive operations. I'm sure the companies that you'd like to be working with and are starting conversations with, are they, again, going over to the mining side, which I've done a lot of interviews in that, even a few years ago, the conversation was different than it is now. Now you have positions like, chief technology officers and those kind of things. How is the communication when you're trying to sort of, are people up to date, or is there a lot of sort of hand holding that needs to still happen as you walk through the process?
It's interesting. I'll answer it directly, but try to be a little nuanced along the way as it goes to this kind of wind at our back sort of transition in society on these climate issues. Is that when you talk to some of these large corporations, lumber mills, forest product companies, companies with net zero goals, it's the aircraft carrier analogy. It's kind of hard to turn them, but they turn slowly. But the interesting thing, and over the course of the last year, there is a lot of these companies have a genuine, deeply seated view that this needs to change, and they cannot have the emissions that they've had before. So the change is real and palpable, and accelerating would be kind of the direct answer I'd kind of give to you. Is it's corporate bureaucracies are slow, and corporations are going to be a key part of making this transition. There's just no way about it, no other way about it. And it's just great to see them, that sort of sense of urgency starting to show up within key people in a lot of these corporations. We've had several people starting to reach out to us that we know in some of these large corporations just through our past lives of, hey, what are you guys at Myno doing? Let's talk about doing something together. So we're pretty excited about that, of our just kind of extended networks from everybody involved in it. Or, we're starting to generate a lot of inquiries about this. So whether we're a success or not, I deeply believe we're going to be a rollicking success. But whether we are or not, this change is coming. It is palpable out there, and we see it everywhere with these corporations and in state governments and municipalities that we're dealing with on it. People get it that it's got to change.
I wonder, this is a very simple question, but is it, does the system change? Like, let's say there's a lot of these pulp and paper and things like that. They are, and the sawmills, if they own one, they own 10, right? Some of these are huge corporations. Does the system change from place to place, or is the system like, does it make it different that it's cedar or pine, that kind of thing? Or is that all part of the system of getting it set up? Just sort of that nuts and bolts side of it?
It's not a material change, I would put it, between some of these different, there's different, project specific variables that we'll have to account for. But what we like about it is it's a lot of, and this is, rinse and repeat, these things are, and that's the other thing I like about the scalability of the model too, is that, prove out the first few, and then I think it's, you're running downhill, and it gets to be very easy from there, because it's there's a lot of, we can do a lot of positive work just with forest products and woody biomass in the agriculture sector. We've got we joke we're the only kind of small self-funded company in the world that has our own moonshot division down in Brazil. We're focused on the Amazon as the biggest of all carbon sinks. So we're starting to lay the groundwork down there. We had a great guy down in Brazil starting to do similar stuff down there for us. So the things that we're doing here in the States, we hope to be doing those exact same things down in Brazil within the next year or two. So, a lot of ambition, and the view from down there too is that there's a lot of very, very enlightened companies, energy companies through our connections down there that see these things have to change, that have big investments in Brazil also that are looking to work with us there.
Did you is this that when you have that sort of, do you feel like because you started with that core team and some investors that are actually involved and things like that, does that give you that flexibility to be able to sort of make those strategic, if you've got 1,000 investors from day one, it can get a little tricky, or if you've got these big organizations that are funding it in that. Does it give you that flexibility to really lay the groundwork for the company you feel has the best long-term value?
It does. No, it's a great question. And it's, these early days on a startup, you're pivoting all over the place trying to figure things out. So to have that sort of, ability to remain nimble, because it's, all of us, funded the thing, that's huge, because we've done a few quick 180s that have shocked ourselves, but we're okay, well, that's the right thing to do here. So, it'd be much more difficult to do that if we were capitalized any different way. But we also have no illusions about it that, 2 trillion tons need to come out of the atmosphere, and that is going to be, require massive amounts of capital. So I think it's, the right sort of early
you are
days.
going to need investors, more investors as you go along. I mean, you're going to have to with the scale that you want to operate at.
Yep. And we're approaching that here in a very good way. And a lot of these, net zero companies are, wanting to get involved in it too. So, we're pretty encouraged about, we've had the great benefit of all of us having done, a few different things in life along the way, learned a couple of things, in our past, and to be able to apply those now. And it's something that we consciously came into this as, okay, we're going to have to figure this out. And then, once we kind of get the model, then we can really look at, growth and scale and, capital and these sort of decisions. But, early on, it's been great to kind of figure out, to maintain that sort of, open, collaborative nimbleness needed to figure out how to do a new thing well.
Well, the question is, because you said at the beginning, you've been around for a year. So it makes me wonder, what has been the biggest, I mean, there's just pivots. They're just part of it. Can I ask what has been the biggest pivot, or maybe not the biggest, but the key one that you made that pivot, you went, now we're going in a good, it's just a clear or a better direction?
Yeah, no, it's an easy answer. It's the mission-based thinking about this, of rather than chasing, bright, shiny things that we could all make, a good quick buck on. And again, credit to Tom, our chairman, for really pushing on that. But everybody's drank the Kool-Aid on that one, that to really do what we need to do, we need to have that North Star to focus on. And that's really what it is. It's that mission statement of sequestering as much carbon as we can, as fast as we can, at capital efficient scale. We want to do it at scale. You got to invest wisely to do that, especially to attract capital. It better be efficient, or you're not going to go too far. So the biggest, the real, consolidation where we really started to, kind of get our mojo internally was when we really focused on the mission, on that, because it has helped us with so many different questions and decisions that come up about opportunities and how to approach a certain thing. So that's been the most important thing, is the mission-based thinking within the company.
Yeah. When someone says they're involved in a new company, it's always one of the first things I look at is their mission statement. And I can tell, not to say that I'm some expert entrepreneur by any stretch, but I can tell right away if someone has a clear direction. And I want to talk a little bit, like that relationship with Tom. Is that an everyday that you two are talking and discussing things and flushing out ideas? It's sort of, how has even that relationship evolved, having a co-founder like that? And I read his bio; it was very interesting.
Yeah, no, he's great. Met Tom years ago. We started networking, about a year ago, really kind of thinking of, what would be an interesting business to start up. He's been, I say with the utmost respect, he's been, trying to save the world before save the world was cool. And, we all got the bug to try and do that. Now that it is cool, it just it makes it a whole lot easier, for us with the wind at our back than the things he encountered, in his career. But no, he's just, you couldn't have a better chairman or, guide, mentor for the company. We all rely, heavily on him. He's accomplished a few things in his career. He's had a real successful run at it. And, we deal, we call each other anytime. We talk frequently. He, in a great way, works on a lot of different special projects for us of things that we're looking at getting into. And I would, if I could, a founder of a startup, if I could wish him one thing, it would be a chairman or mentor, kind of like Tom, to be able to help guide the way on a lot of this stuff. So he's been terrific. His value to us just, cannot be overstated. So just a great team. And it kind of led to that mission-based thinking, and then a lot of help on, getting in real expert, people and, some of the different managerial disciplines within Myno that can really grow and scale their own fiefdoms as we start taking off here.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, Thor. I hope you're, it's just where we wrap up here. I hope you're going to come back on the show here and within the next year or so, because it's one of those things. It's almost like we're laying a foundation. Excuse me. It's almost like we're laying a foundation right now of what I think is going to be very exciting. Again, it's one of these things that I look at so much stuff, and then all of a sudden you came out and with what you're doing, and I went, oh, there's a whole other side of this. This isn't, when we were thinking agriculture, this is not what we had in mind. But that's why we do the show, to flush out technology and actually let people explain it. with 45 minutes instead of a 5-minute thing. So thanks for coming on. I really genuinely hope you're back on. I think it's very exciting what you're doing, and I want to wish you and your team the best, and I'm certainly going to be following along.
No, thanks, Jared. I really appreciate the time. Yeah, I look forward to doing this again here real soon. So it'll be fun to keep it going here.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, Thor, for coming on the show. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This agriculture show has, we knew there was a demand because of our audience. We see metrics, but we were not expecting the excitement that it had. So thank you for Thor and Myno for being some of our first episodes. Thank you for sponsors like MNP, who are, all of our others, so many of us, not all of them, most of our sponsors came on from, after a few episodes. MNP was with us right out the gate, which is just absolutely amazing. Please keep following, sharing, liking, commenting, telling us who the next guest should be. The diversity of guests we have is because it's not just us booking. There's people helping us get other guests on the show that have all different, are approaching heavy industry from all different aspects. So thank you for that. We will see you on the next episode of Crownsmen Agriculture.